Project Binky in colour. Starring Nick Blackhurst. Also starring Richard Brunning. And Rex Hamilton as Abraham Lincoln.
Tonight's episode, Bad Luck and Hard Love. Coming up in episode 6, Nick needs to make his mind up.
Well, make your mind up.
I make a good point.
That is a very good point. That is a very good point.
And a female infiltrates our man cave. We left the last episode with a load of work to complete on the rear end of the car. So the first thing we've done is tie in the strut towers to the window rail and the parcel shelf. Then it's time to turn our attention to the rear seat back.
It's taken a few hours to prep this panel to go back in, the majority of which was removing what I could only describe as some sort of textured masonry paint from the back side here. And whatever it was, it had to go. So I've taken this back to bare metal and etch primed it. These lower bottom corners were also looking a bit scabby, so I've cut them off and replaced those.
So we've bolted the seat back into place before welding it up. And as you can see, about half the original holes don't even line up with the parcel shelf. You can't beat 1980s British Leyland build quality. Hopefully Nick's welding won't come apart at the first sign of a pothole or a strong breeze. To add a little more rigidity, we're going to turn the joint between the seat back and the parcel shelf into a box section using this new panel here. It'll also tie the two turrets together and act like a strut brace.
The next step was to finish off the rear chassis rails so I could fit the new rear valance, and then I can then fit the new rear panel. I say was because the master craftsman I nearly said fitted then, who threw the rear valance on this car last time, decided there was no need for a rear flange on the rear panel, so I've got nothing to build to.
Oh well, if we'd wanted a simple and straightforward project, we'd have found ourselves a Gordian knot to untie. Anyway, faced with the lack of a decent flange, we'll have to work around the problem. I'm sure Nick's got something up his sleeve.
So I've got a whole new plan, and it starts with the rear quarter panels.
Finally, a job that doesn't need a whole lot of fabrication. Just a straightforward panel replacement. Easy peasy.
Don't be ridiculous.
I suppose I should have learnt by now that whenever Nick is involved, nothing is straightforward. Let's get this panel off and see what the fuss is all about. I guess he means all that surface rust on the lower window rail. It's easily cleaned up though. I don't know what he's moaning about. Oh, that. Yes. No. That rot will have to be replaced. Well, get on with it then. Just cut out the rotten bit and fit a new bit of steel. Tidy.
After a bit of a fettle, I'm happy enough with the fit of this quarter panel. What I'm not happy about is the lack of strength in this whole area. So before this gets welded on, I need to take it off and strengthen it up a bit. 3mm wall inch box, 2mm plate gusset, 2mm plate gusset, and a 2mm plate gusset.
I'm pretty sure that given half the chance, he'd even add some more steel to the Eiffel Tower, as, and I quote, it looks a bit flimsy.
Honestly, I'll leave him alone in the workshop for 10 minutes, and when I come back, there's even less mini now than there was before I left.
The next job is to give ourselves a bit more tyre clearance by half-tubbing these rear arches. And to help with that, I've got this.
No, it's not some type of blue Mexican moustache. It's a template to cut the panel out to. The lower curve matches the original arch line, and the upper curve follows the line made by the crown of the inner arch before we hacked it to pieces.
First, I need to get the paint off.
A grinder with a wire wheel attachment will make short work of the paint removal. Then it's mark out the panel using the trusty red pen. The eagle-eyed among you will have noticed a line of holes around 10mm in from the new outer edge. And if you didn't notice, pay more attention. Nick will cut the panel out to the line made by the holes and not to the solid line above it.
By cutting that wheel arch mounting flange off, I've lost a lot of strength in the panel and somewhere to weld me in a wheel arch to, so I need to put it back. To do that, I've got a special tool.
It doesn't look very special. Looks like a bit of bar with a slot cut in it.
I know it looks like a bit of bar with a slot cut in it, because frankly that's what it is, but it's very important and it works like this.
You can see now why the panel was cut 10mm short. It was so Nick can reinstate that flange.
The trick with this is to go steady. Don't try and bend the flange all at once. Do 8 or 9 passes all the way around of about 10 degrees each, otherwise you'll end up distorting the main panel.
That looks pretty good.
And to finish it off, all it needs is a quick go round with a hammer and dolly just to take out any unevenness.
So the rumours are true. He does like hammering dolly. Not sure what Dolly thinks of it though. Now that the panel is back on, you can see how much extra tyre clearance this modification will give us.
Now I need to cut away the outer half of the inner wheel arch and replace it with this.
There really is very little left now of the new inner arches. Some might call it a waste. We like to think of it as high art, or more accurately, 2 blokes cocking about. Okay, not bad. The arch extensions are in and it's finally time to fit the quarter panel.
The last job under here is to finish this strut tower by putting an outer skin on it.
Damn you, Blackhurst. There's always something else, isn't there?
Now I can fit the rear quarter.
That was my line, you bugger. Anyway, the rear quarter is on and welded to the car. It still leaves the rusty old valance and rear panel though. It must be time to cut these bits off now, surely. Yay, it's grinder time! She does look rather naked without her arse end on, but I'm so glad to get rid of these tin worm infected old panels. Right, let's get cracking with giving her a new backside. We've bolted the valance on the rear panel together and clamped it into position on the car. We'll fix the valance to the chassis rails first. These fillets will join the rear chassis rails to the new valance, much like this. Before the rear panel goes on, we've got to make the boot floor, as it gets sandwiched in between the valance and the rear panel. So that's the next job. Just making the cardboard template took hours, and the finished articles in steel took hours more, but they look fantastic. We've whipped up some captives to weld into the chassis rails. Nope, I've no idea why either, but I'm sure that Nick has a good reason for it. There's the 2 outer boot floor panels welded in, and we've added a new earth point for the rear end, just in case. And there's the main boot floor panel fixed into place. It's going to take some considerable time to flat back all the welds on the panel on both sides, in which case it's got to be time for a brew. Bloody hell, I only went outside for a waz and now he's dunking his biscuit in my wife's tea. Nick obviously reckons that size really does matter. Alright you two, get a room. No wait, no don't do that, that'd be really bad. We've added some bracing to keep the parcel shelf in place before fitting the back panel properly.
So far this series, we've made you endure countless stitch welds, seam welds and plug welds to the point where I'm amazed anyone's still watching. Actually, I'm amazed anyone was watching in the first place. In my opinion, you all need help. Anywho, what we've got now is something completely different. Some welding. This time, we're trying to seamlessly join 2 single skin panels with the added bonus that it's going to be on show. Now, this is tricky at the best of times in any build or restoration. But my method for success is to start with a 2mm gap. And this is for 2 very good reasons. Firstly, if you butt the panels together and weld them, when the weld cools and shrinks, they tend to push up and buckle because the metal's got nowhere to go. And secondly, when you're welding a gap, you're trying to melt the 2 edges together. This means you can get full penetration using a lot less amps and therefore less heat distortion. So, given all that, and with a bit of patience, what you should be able to achieve is an invisible joint that doesn't even need filler before paint. Stay tuned to watch me eat those words.
Okay, so here we go. This is the 2mm gap he needs to fill, and the idea is to bridge the gap slowly by adding a series of small welds until the whole length of the joint is filled. This keeps the heat to a minimum and therefore the distortion. Here come the rest of the welds. You can see that when taken from behind, he's achieved maximum penetration. Stop tittering, you lot. A grinding disc will take the bulk of the weld off, but it's important to keep the grinder moving. You can create enough heat to distort the panel with the grinder if you leave it in one place too long. After the grinding disc, take the flappy wheel linisher to carefully flat the panel to finish it off. A quick spray with etch primer to protect the bare steel, and once it's had a couple of coats of high build primer before paint, what you've got is an invisible panel join with no filler. It doesn't look too bad from the inside either.
Bloody hell, I leave them alone for 5 minutes and there's an entire new rear end on the car.
Due to an unfortunate childhood incident, to which I'm not prepared to go into, apart from to say it was something to do with being savaged by a turbot, Nick is profoundly and deeply suspicious of spot welds, hence the gargantuan amounts of plug welds in this build.
The floor's done, the front bulkhead's in, we've now got an arse as firm as Kylie's. I think it's finally time to get rid of this temporary bracing.
Ooh, that's very exciting. Crack on, mate. Let's get all that box section out and see how it looks. I think this might take a while, so in the meantime, let's get the funk out.
Just over 16 metres, if you were wondering.
Core, it feels like a year since those brace bars went in for the first time. Oh wait, it was a year ago, so that kind of makes sense. Anyway, now that they're gone, that's a major landmark in the build and the shell looks fantastic. It's nearly there, but we're not quite done with the shell fabrication yet, so we may as well crack on with it and get it finished. So the plan is to finish the end of these chassis rails, then flange the tops of the subframe mounting boxes for the back seat base to fit on, modify the companion boxes to go over the step in the new floor, and then fit those, and then whack the rear seat base in. And here's the parts that'll make all that happen. And here they are, fitted to the car.
The companion boxes are ready to be welded in, but before I do that, I'm going to take them out again and fit these 3mm roll cage spacer plates. Now, I've no intention of fitting a cage, but fear is such a great changer of minds and it's such an easy job to do at this stage, it'd almost be daft not to future-proof it.
Now that the roll cage plates are in, you know, just in case, the companion boxes are fitted. They look great too. This old seat base is a rusty pile of poo and has no place in the shiny new Mini, so we're going to make a new one. But before we can make the cardboard template, the rear subframe has got to go back in to check clearances. And you lot know the drill by now. Here he is. He's called Colin. Here's the CAD template on the floor, and here it is in situ on the car. What first appeared to be a relatively straightforward panel has ended up being one of the most challenging on the shell.
Remaking this rear seat base also involves remaking this little angled reinforcer at the front. Now, long thin panels can be quite difficult to form, so to make things easy I've added this little reinforcer to the front of the rear seat base panel, making it an easy job to bend it up and then cut it off.
This new reinforcement can't go on until the rest of the panel is bent up and formed, and this is what the steel seat base looks like after a few hours of fettling. We'll just trial fit the seat base to make sure that no adjustments are needed, as it'll be much more difficult once the reinforcing panel is welded in.
Alright.
Here's the completed seat base in all its naked steel glory.
Planning ahead again, before the back seat goes in, I've got to fit these two channel sections to cap off the chassis rail. Now they do the same job if they were flat, but with the channel in them, they're also going to give us a neat solution for running the wiring loom through to the boot. Or trunk, if you're in the colonies. It's a car, it's not a tree or an elephant.
Nick's latest self-help book, How to Lose Friends and Alienate People, will be available soon. Sometimes we wonder why things take so damn long. Then we realise there's 129 plug welds in this panel alone. The cutout in the seat back is for the exhaust. We'll relieve the seat base when the exhaust goes in. And these plates underneath fill the gap between the chassis rail and the seat base panel. These rectangular holes are for access into the bolts that hold the subframe on. Let's see if he's got this seat base in level. Make the noise! A quick modification to the seat base support is the next job. Done.
Now that the seat base is in, the next job is to bring these rear chassis rails forward. To do that, I need to clean up all this weld, but before I can do that, I need to double weld it underneath.
It also needs a bit of finishing off of the back seat upright, cleaning back a load of welds and generally tidying up this neglected part of the car. Now, take it from me, Nick doesn't like welding or grinding on his back.
I don't enjoy welding upside down. I don't enjoy doing anything upside down that doesn't involve the enthusiastic participation of a cowgirl. So I've got this box.
I'm sure we're all intrigued by the contents of Nick's box.
Okay, there's nothing special about the box. It was £4 off eBay. But this switch that's in it, oh, that's a different matter. The switch is connected to a wire that goes into a control box which takes power from a battery to turn a motor that winds a screw that pulls an arm which is attached to a shaft that has a bracket that's bolted to the jig.
Bloody hell, who gave him coffee?
Which all means I can do this.
Of course it does that. Why wouldn't it?
Now that the car is in a much more suitable position, Nick can get on with the welding. And it doesn't take too long before the car has to go back to the flat position to finish off the chassis legs. Sorry, couldn't resist. It really is awesome.
Now I can start in on these chassis rails. Second thoughts, might have a brew first.
Okay, I think that's enough for this episode. We'll clean up, tidy up, have another brew, and we'll call it a day. What are we doing tonight, Nick?
Same thing we do every night, Rich. Try to take over the world.
Be sure to tune in next time for another exciting episode from the files of Project Binky. It's been brought to our attention that some of you have been inspired by what you've seen on our project. For example, these guys from Hartford Area Career and Technology Centre in Vermont have created their very own grinder scarecrow. We're not jealous at all of your CNC plasma cutter. No, we're not. If there are others among you that have been motivated to make something, drop us a line. We'll try to feature them on our website.